I'd like to call to order the February 18th Tredyffrin Township Board of Supervisors meeting. Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you. We're going to start with announcements. The pension trustees meeting that was scheduled for Wednesday, February 12th has been rescheduled to Wednesday, February 26th. Lancaster County Timber Frames has been hired to perform necessary wooden deck repair and replacement on the existing Contention Lane Bridge. That's the intersection of Sweetsford Road and Coldstream, if you're wondering where it is, over the Chester Valley Trail. Work is expected to begin in mid-February and last through the end of March and will be dependent upon weather. Contention Lane at the bridge will be closed to all pedestrian and vehicular traffic during this time. Property owners are reminded that annual stormwater inspection reports are due on or before April 1st. The township has received a number of reports from property owners, and we thank those who have already submitted their reports and remind others of the upcoming April deadline for the 2025 reports. Next, we have a motion to approve the minutes of the January 21st public meeting. Do I hear a motion? Do I hear a second?
Second.
Any comments from the board on the minutes? Any comments from the public on the minutes? All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. The board met in executive session prior to this meeting to discuss legal matters. Now we'll have supervisor liaison reports. Supervisor Humble.
Thank you. The Parks and Rec board was supposed to have met last month, but we didn't because of weather conditions on the day of the meeting. So there was no Parks and Recreation meeting held last month. The next meeting will be on Wednesday, March the 12th at 7 p.m. in this building. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Humble. Supervisor Holt.
Yes, members of the board met with several very qualified candidates for the inaugural Arts Commission, and I'm happy tonight to make a motion to appoint Angela Scully and Patty Benson to an initial 3-year term, Libby Bernick and Kara Klein-Thomas to initial 2-year terms on the Art Commission. Following these initial terms, they will be eligible for reappointment to a full 3-year term. I've met with all these candidates, found them very well qualified, interesting backgrounds, passionate about the arts and what they can bring to our community, and looking forward to working with them on the Arts Commission.
Thank you, Supervisor Holt. I'll second that motion. Any comments? Any comments from the public? All in favor say aye. 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 Motion carries.
All right, I will start with this Historical Commission. We have 2 items tonight on our agenda from the Historical Commission, so I'm going to hold off on discussing those. But the group is making excellent progress. The last meeting was engaging and productive as Robert Emanuel, our staff liaison, guided us through a process to refine the Commission's view on policy directions for the preservation in the township. I'm excited to see how this process unfolds over the next year to update our ordinance for the Historic Resources Overlay District. The next Historical Commission meeting is March 13th at 7 p.m. I am also going to give a report for Supervisor Basker, who's not able to be here tonight. The Environmental Advisory Council met on Tuesday, January 28th. In addition to recommending Tracy Viola for membership, the EAC confirmed Amber Levy as vice chair, Jennifer Cox as secretary, Dale Klein as liaison to the Park and Rec Board, Ann Murphy as liaison to the Zoning Hearing Board and Planning Commission, and Susanna Hay as liaison to the Historical Commission. Robert Williams of the Historical Commission attended the meeting to discuss potential areas to cooperate on activities and to brief the EAC on plans for America 250 starting in 2026. Other highlights include the EAC and Public Works have agreed that meadow areas in parks will not be mowed. Valley Creek restoration projects have been completed and the installed water quality monitor is working. There was discussion about a potential additional bin for plastic bag and film recycling. The rain garden program is complete. Leftover shrubs will be planted at the rain gardens at Wilson Farm Park and the Stratford Library. Possible updates to the woodland conservation ordinance based on experience to date were discussed, and Ann Murphy will work on this. I'd also like to provide an update from the EAC on the Krabby Creek Restoration Project and the completion of a 6-year effort with the Valley Creek Restoration Partnership, the Township, and Valley Creek Trout Unlimited to fund, design, and successfully install 4 stormwater infiltration beds in 3 sites in neighborhoods of the Krabby Creek watershed. The partnership was successful in obtaining over $800,000 in funding for this project, including over $200,000 from the newly adopted Stormwater Fund. An additional $250,000 in funding has also been raised towards engineering oversight, monitoring, and 2 more stormwater infiltration installations, bringing the total raised in support of this phase of the Krabby Creek infiltration in excess of $1,050,000. And with that, I would like to make a motion to appoint Tracy Viola as a regular member of the EAC.
Well, I will second that motion. Any comments? Comments from the public? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
That concludes my reports. Yeah.
Thank you. Supervisor Wysocki.
I don't have a report this evening, but the Planning Commission next meeting is this Thursday, February 20th, here in Keene Hall.
Thank you, Supervisor Wysocki. Supervisor Johnston-Pugh.
I do not have any, updates from my own board, but I do have one for Bhaskar for the library board. As of February the 18th board meeting, in addition to making a motion to confirm Rebecca Schultz Thorpe to the Library Board of Trustees, I would like to give this report. The Library Board of Trustees met on Thursday, January the 23rd, 2025, and here are some highlights. The board re-elected Rob Rose as their treasurer. Library visits continue trending towards an upward, though they're still below the pre-pandemic levels. A highlight of the 2024 for Chester County Library System was that digital book checkouts were over 1 million, behind only the Philadelphia and the Pittsburgh libraries. Programs offering in attendance also continue to climb year on year. In 2024, there were a total of 1,679 programs offered with 31,296 attendees versus 1,349 programs in 2023 with 23,889 attendees. New weatherproof drop boxes have been ordered for the Stratford Library. When they are installed, we will no longer lose books that were returned in bad weather because of the current box leak. The next meeting of the Library Board of Trustees will be at 7 p.m. on Thursday, February 27th, 2025 at the Paoli Library. That concludes my report for Supervisor Bhaskar.
Thank you, Supervisor Johnston-Pugh.
Is there a motion to
appoint? Rebecca, yeah. Go ahead.
Yes, I'd like to make a motion to confirm Rebecca Schultz Thorpe to the Library Board of Trustees.
I second it.
All in favor?
Yeah, but any comments first? Any comments from the public? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Thank you very much, Supervisor Johnston-Pugh. Next, we have a report from the Reapportionment Committee. This is an update. Mr. Martin and then Mr. Onnested.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. As you recall, we are in the process under our Home Rule Charter to do our reapportionment as required from the last census. We had our kickoff meeting. Thanks to Doug Onnested, who's done a ton of work on this. He's going to share a little information, and after this meeting, we'll have some more things up on the website so people can start taking a look at it in this process. We have representatives from each of the party, Ed Sweeney from the Republicans, Alan Yockey from the Democrats, Doug, of course, doing the work with us and staff, and 3 members of the board, Bhaskar, David Miller, and Julie Gossi. So we had our first meeting, and Doug has done a great job with putting some workable maps for us together. And with that, I'll ask Doug if he wants to come up, and I'll pull up your slide for you, and he can give you a little more information.
There we go. All right, thank you. So after each census, the township is supposed to examine the 3 regions used to elect the Tredyffrin Township Supervisors. We refer to these 3 regions today as the East, Middle, and West regions. As the current voting regions being used are extremely unequal in population, the Board of Supervisors decided it was time for new reapportionment. Reapportionment is the process of redistricting the 3 regions voting for supervisors to be more equal in population. The reapportionment committee was formed to come up with a new voting map where the populations for the 3 regions are much closer in population. This new map will be first used in the 2027 election. The committee is made up of 6 members. 3 of the members, as mentioned earlier, are David Miller, Bhaskar, Julie Gassi. The other 3 members, as mentioned before, are Alan Yaki, Ed Sweeney, and myself, Doug Onestad. And it is nice that they did include a representation from the community across different political spectrum. The reapportionment committee will form the potential voting regions by moving precincts around the regions. The committee will not touch the current precinct boundaries themselves or where people vote. The reapportionment committee met for the first time on Monday, February 3rd. At that meeting, the committee agreed on the criteria that we will use to evaluate the potential new voting maps. The criteria agreed upon are: regions must be contiguous, regions should be compact, regions are close to equal in population, we're going to try to keep neighborhoods intact, and we're going to try to minimize the disruption when we redo this from the old maps to the new maps. The committee utilized a website tool that was designed 8 years ago for the school district's redistricting efforts, and we're using that now to look at various maps and analyze them in terms of population and how they look in terms of how compact they are and the population differences. Our next meeting will be this Monday, February 24th. At this meeting, we will begin the process of looking at different possible new maps and evaluating them against the criteria that we agreed upon. We are expecting to have 3 to 4 meetings and to make a recommendation to the Board of Supervisors. Once the Board of Supervisors approves a new set of regions, it will go to the county for final approval and record the new voting maps. The reapportionment committee will update the public at each supervisor meeting until it makes a final recommendation to the Board of Supervisors.
Thank you, Mr. Onestad.
Thank you.
Any questions from the public or from the supervisors?
There's one in the audience and one virtual, so we'll start with the audience member.
Yeah, sure.
Please come up to the microphone.
From the general public, yes. So the three members of the public are Alan Yaki, who was picked by the Democrats, Ed Sweeney, who was picked by the Republicans, and myself, and I'm an independent. So you have all 3 on that committee. 6 total. There's 3 supervisors as well.
Yeah, and the 3 supervisors are the existing district members, so they're understanding those, so that they would have skin in the game as well. So it makes sense to have them as part of the committee. Go ahead, Ms. Clark, you're good. I don't think you're coming through, so if you want to send us, I see your microphone moving, but there's no sound coming out.
Sorry, just give us a chance.
Yeah, Carol, if you want to send us your question, I'll certainly follow up with you, if that's probably the best bet at this point.
Any other questions? Thanks, Doug.
Thank you.
Next, we have a motion to accept the 1289 Yellow Springs Road historic study completed by Chronicle Heritage and a workshop update. Mr. Martin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Tonight, we have before you, if you recall, part of the FEMA grant application to acquire properties for stormwater, this property, 1289 Yellow Springs, often referred to as the Gin Isle property. As part of that process, they required a heritage study and a workshop study for the Historic Commission. As you know, we engaged the consultant to start this process. They've completed their study, which is attached in your packet and will be available online. A very detailed study of the property, very good information. So that box was completed as part of the application process. And they also conducted a workshop on behalf of the Historic Commission to help them in the future be able to identify these kind of properties and do a similar type of report in the future. So Rob Williams is here for the Historic Commission, also Robert Emanuel. I don't know if you guys have any additional comments and you'd like to share with the board, that'd be great.
Sure. So I can give a little background on the findings of the report and then how the in-person training day went. So as Mr. Martin said, sure, everyone, my name is Robert Emanuel. I am the planner for Tredyffrin Township. So the final report, originally it was assumed that while we knew the structure was built in 1937, there was evidence to suggest that portions of the house may have been a little older, dating back to the late 18th century. Upon completion of their report, Candace Strawley and Laura DiMatteo of Chronicle Heritage confirmed that there is likely no section of the house that is older than its agreed upon construction date of 1937. However, it does meet the National Park Service 2 criteria for historic designation, that is criteria B and C, which is people and architectural significance. It was the ancestral home, or the family home of the Hires Root Beer family, as well as was the location of a prominent commentary on economic and social reform called, give me one second, called Land, Labor, and Wealth. Was written at this house, so it meets the criteria A, which is for people, and the criteria B, it is a prominent example of colonial revival style architecture, which was prominent in the main line from 1930 to about 1960.
Thank you. Sure. Thanks. Do I hear a motion? Do I have a second?
Second.
Do I have any comments from the board or any questions? Any comments or questions from the public? All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Motion to add 1406 Thomas Road to the Historic Resources map. Ms. McPherson.
I also have Robert speaking on this, since he's definitely more in tune with what's happening.
Sure, I should have stayed up here. So, hello everyone again. So, 1406 Thomas Road, this is a property that's owned by the Wamplers. Their house was it was a prominent farm back in colonial America and was also briefly the home of Brigadier General Enoch Poor during the Valley Forge encampment during the Revolutionary War. Their house was previously protected under a previous historical protection ordinance that we had in the township. They were unaware when that ordinance was sort of taken away and rewritten that their home was no longer protected, so they would like to join our historic resource overlay map. This will be our first addition to their historic resource map. It actually doesn't exist yet, so the Wamplers' house will be the first one. They wrote a letter to us back in December stating that they would like to be on this map, and in accordance with our code, the Historical Commission met, discussed whether or not it would meet one of our predefined criterias to be accepted to the map. The Historical Commission determined that it would. We then notified in writing that their home was up for recommendation to be added to this map, which they consented to. It is now the board's determination whether or not they accept this recommendation, and then we have to file, if so, we then have to file a report with the county.
Thank you. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Any board comments or questions?
I'd just like to say that I think this is an exciting milestone for our historic preservation efforts, the first property added to our historic resources map. And this comes at a key time when we are working towards developing our historical protection ordinance. So I appreciate the Wamplers for being proactive towards protecting their historical property.
Thank you, Supervisor Gussie. Any other comments? Any comments from the public? Sure.
Christine Johnson, Mount Pleasant. How do you apply for an application for this historic designation or whatever? Who do I contact?
Sure, so I can give you a little bit of background. So right now, our current historical protection ordinance is opt-in. So there are a couple of different ways by which it can sort of come before the board, but the main way is you write a letter of intent to the township. We receive the letter of intent, it is then voted upon by the historical commission to either recommend or not recommend to the board of supervisors. So if you would like to include your house on there, write me a letter. You'll then be put on the historical commission agenda. They'll do some research on your property and then make a determination.
Okay, thank you very much. I appreciate it, and I will give you the information. Turn it off.
All right, any other public comments? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Motion to adopt the 2024 Subdivision and Land Development Activities Report as required by the municipality's planning code. Ms. McPherson.
Thank you, Chairman Miller, members of the board. Yeah, this is a pretty standard operation every year. We're required by the municipal planning code to adopt this report that basically just shows the activities that the planning commission did. So we're requesting the motion to be made to adopt it.
No, thank you. Thank you, Ms. McPherson. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Any comments on the board? Any comments from the public? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Motion to approve the application for a minor subdivision for 1835 and 1886 Horseshoe Trail. Ms. McPherson.
So this is a minor subdivision, lot line change that the Planning Commission has reviewed. The applicants are here to talk a little bit more about the plan.
Thanks, guys.
Hi, I'm Philip Neal. I'm with House Surveying. I'm the professional that prepared the plan. The applicants basically live next door. We had provided a boundary survey at first for them to find that the fence line that they installed doesn't quite go along with the title line in the recorded deed. So basically, we're here to circumvent having to go to court and get adverse possession one way or another. We wanted to do a, lot line swap and change just to make that happen. To equal land going left and right, so it's not really changing any of the values of the total area. So it should just be, the harmony of their neighborhood is what we're going for here.
Are the property owners here?
Yes.
And-
Mr.
No, go
Jessup's
ahead.
here. Yep.
And you guys are both fine with this, the property owners?
So Mr. Jessup's one of the owners, counsel for the other owners.
Okay.
Richard Pressman for Dr. Ashby, for Jason.
Okay, and you guys are fine with this?
Yes.
Okay.
We've negotiated this with counsel and individually, and we're very happy with the result.
Okay, good. I mean, I was at a planning commission meeting when you discussed it, so I heard the stories. But do I hear a second, first of all?
Second.
Do we hear any comments or questions from us? Anything you want to ask these guys?
Does anybody recall what the no vote in the planning commission, if they explained that?
I could explain that. One of the planning commission members read in the ordinance that if it's an irregular lot line, it should, she kind of harked on the fact that it is not a naturally straight line as it used to be. And it now kind of zigs and zags around where the fence line was. Our client's position was if we couldn't get the subdivision as needed, they would have to take each other to court, get an issue with adverse possession, which would then inherently circumvent this board and get the line written basically as we show it. So we're trying to forego any kind of legal action between each other. And it's to protect the landscape. That's mainly the fence line for Mr. Jessup has a lot of landscaping that he's planted within the fenced area. So if you were to swap it back, it would be tearing out his bushes, all his prized landscape that he doesn't, want to have to give up at this point.
Any other comments from the board? Any other comments from the public? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thanks for coming to explain it, by the way. This was helpful. Thanks.
No problem. Thank you.
Oh, yeah, the microphone. Thanks, guys. Motion approved change order 10 for the Berwyn Fire Company Bridge Avenue project. Mr. Martin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Before you tonight, as you mentioned, there is a change order for the 23 Bridge Fire Station project. This change order from the memo you received from our project manager, Mr. Duda, kind of explains the subcommittee of the fire committee made up of both Tredyffrin and Easttown were aware that the Aqua PA is requiring a vault box. We did not expect it to be as large or as in the location of in the apron of the building. So we were aware of it, there would be an excessive cost in here. However, when it finally came to materials and cost, it is now almost $25,000 over the original estimate. As required under our agreement, these kind of change orders come before both boards. It's before Easttown Township tonight as well. The total cost for the change order is $85,678, of which Tredyffrin is 70% cost of that, which our share will be $59,974.60. As mentioned, it's a requirement. The utilities requiring us to do, really our hands are tied, but in order to have the building, we have to get this meter box put into the concrete out front of the station. So with that, I'd request that you approve this change order. Happy to answer any questions.
No, thank you, Mr. Martin. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Any comments or questions from the board? Comments or questions from the public? I've sat in these meetings. I mean, we have no choice. If we want water in the firehouse, we're going to approve it. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Oh, it's a roll call vote? It doesn't say that on here. Oh.
Do you see right here?
That was the next one.
You're wrong. It's not a roll call.
Yeah. Oh my goodness, you're wrong. We have to write that down. I know, it's the next one. I was like, oh my God. All right, so back to all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Motion to adopt Resolution 25-09, confirming and ratifying established committees of the board, ad hoc committees, advisory boards, and task forces. Mr. Martin, and this is a roll call vote.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, you did point out this will be a roll call vote as this is a resolution. So as part of what we were reviewing, our Home Rule Charter Committee has been looking at the Home Rule Charter, and this is, as we read deeply into the more intricate readings of the charter, it does require that we do by resolution, even any establishments of any committees within the Board of Supervisors or any ad hoc or advisory commissions that are not in an administrative code. So before you tonight, it's really a process meeting. We've already, process action. We've already have these committees. You voted them in public. We were just required to do it by resolution. So attached to this resolution are the members and the committees that need to be ratified by resolution tonight. And going forward, we will have this as part of our reorg in January to be consistent with the charter. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Do we hear a motion?
So moved.
In a second?
Second.
Any comments from the board or questions?
So is this, then, we would have a resolution each year during the reorg? So it's not that this then covers future?
Yeah, correct.
It's not just saying that we have the authority to form them, it's that each year?
Correct. So
Okay.
so as you know, each year, depending the prerogative of the board, you may have different members on the finance committee, the personnel committee. Usually we will have that reorg ready for the year. You'll have your committee assignments. For example, these committees include the Paley Task Force, Personnel Reapportionment Committee, the Charter Review Committee, the ones that are kind of fall outside the administrative code. And some of them will be specific to individuals, some will be, so for example, the ad hoc committee for the Paley Transit Task Force, we have SEPTA Amtrak representative. We don't know who that person will be for meeting a meeting, but we have to list, the members that will be on that committee, at least in terms of where they're coming from, so.
Also, obviously, future actions will depend on how we rewrite the charter and what happens.
Correct, as of now, correct, yep.
As of now, yeah, could end up different, but does that make sense? Any other comments from the board? Public comments or questions? It's a roll call vote. Supervisor Humble?
Aye.
Supervisor Holt?
Aye.
Supervisor Gussie?
Aye.
Supervisor Wysocki?
Aye.
Supervisor
Yes.
Johnston Pugh?
Yes.
And I vote aye. Motion carries. Motion to approve ESCO release number 4, the final release for the Delaware Valley Friends School Phase 1A, in the amount of $24,506.50. Balance remaining zero. Mr. Burgo.
Chairman Miller and members of the board, this is a final release for the Phase 1A of the Delaware Valley Friends School project. All items have been completed and are recommended for the board in the amount identified for release this evening.
Thank you, Mr. Burgo. Do I hear a motion?
So moved.
Or a second? Yep. Any comments from the board or questions? Public comments or questions? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Motion to approve capital purchase of police rifles. Chief Beatty.
Thank you for your time, sir. This is under the police capital, we were doing a replacement schedule for weapons that are used by the emergency response team and for patrol. At this point, we're using CoStar's pricing to replace some older equipment, which we will also be able to resell or sell back. So we're requesting approval to complete the package purchase at $39,710.98. Estimates are showing us that we should be able to get $5,515 for the resale of some of the older units that we're turning in. I'm available for any questions if you have.
No, thanks, Chief Beatty. Do I hear a motion?
So moved.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Any questions from the board? Any questions from the public? Sure, come on up.
Okay, how's that? Good? Roland Johnson, lives at 303 Paoli Woods, Paoli, Pennsylvania. My question is that, it's a twofold question, okay? I believe, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, the police department budget is about 30% of the township budget. And we're hiring 3 new police officers, which brings the force up to, what, 48 or 49? I don't know. Huh? 45 with 3 new officers. The town only has 25,000 people. Well, I'm going by what the website said, okay? What I'd like to know is these rifles, how many times have they been fired?
Fired in the course of
An action.
armed combatant?
Yeah.
None.
None. So why can't right now, we're raising the taxes by 6.5%. Chester County is raising the taxes by 15%. These rifles, never been used. Why not put that off and save $35,000 when we're in the hole? We're raising taxes, and I think we should look at everything that can be put off, because we're going to face more problems economically in this township when all these leases come due on all these corporate complexes here, when people aren't coming back to the office 5 days a week, and people that own these corporate parks are going to come and say, listen, my building's not worth $30 million anymore, it's worth 12, 15 million. And they're going to come and want their taxes lowered. So as a citizen, and as a senior citizen, it's on fixed income, rifles that have never been used, never been shot. Has anybody looked at these rifles?
Yes, sir. These weapons are fired for
They've
training.
never been fired.
No, they're fired for training purposes every month.
Do we need them?
Yes, sir.
Well, okay. We also bought $168,000 worth of new police vehicles. Okay, I'm just saying, I don't know also how many actual calls the police department makes in a week. I'm not talking about a minor traffic thing in a parking lot. How many calls do they actually make in a week where there's a robbery, felony, a break-in, a serious car accident?
Sir, last week we had an armed shooting in the Paoli section
Right.
at 3 o'clock in the afternoon.
Right.
The officers responded in.
I'm not saying that. I'm not saying they didn't respond.
I'm just saying, no, we're prepared for anything and anything that can happen in this community.
Right, but how many calls, I mean, where I used to live in Jersey, they had a police report that came out and said, here's how many actions the police department was on. I was wondering, is that available to the public?
Yes, sir. We provide that report. It's posted with in the board packet. The calls for service go in every month. If you go in, you look, you'll find the calls for service, the type of crimes we deal with. My job as a police chief is to provide for the protection of this community for anything.
I understand that.
So anything and everything can happen. We are a suburb, main corridors on the 5th largest, 6th largest city in the United States. I have to be available. These officers have to be prepared, competent, and capable to handle anything and everything that can happen. And that's what my job is. That's why I'm putting in for this project.
Question.
That's why I asked for patrol cars. That day of that shooting, the parking lot was empty. Every car was in service protecting this community, doing something for that crime.
I'm not questioning that at all. All I'm mentioning is, as a taxpayer, in New York City, okay, and in the police budget is 22%. Police budget is 22% of the New York City budget. They got a lot of crime, 22%. We're at 29%, and all I'm saying as a citizen, I would look at ways to try to save money. And one of the ways can be done, and just mentioning this, okay? We used to have, where I was before, we had traffic enforcement. For example, if there was a minor accident in the Acme, and somebody said, you know, we'd like somebody to come investigate. Is anybody hurt? Nope. Okay? Is it between 9 and 3? Yes. Instead of tying up a trained police officer to come and write down whose insurance was there, they had a traffic person come, auxiliary police, a retired person, came down, write it down, and they saved quite a bit of money, and had the police officers performing police functions, not performing clerical functions. So, is that something we could consider doing?
We'll work together. If that's something the board directs me to undertake, we'll look at that. I don't think it's viable for this community, but that's my personal opinion. I work for the board. If the board tells me that's the direction that you as the citizens, the board wants to go, we'll explore every avenue. What we try and do is put a fiscally responsible product on the road. This budget was discussed back before it was adopted. It didn't just happen this month. It was approved last year as a capital plan for us to move forward, and that's how we've had to proceed. We utilize the best pricing to get the discounts that we can, and we try and get the residual return on the investments we can. So what we're trying to do is purchase something, get return when we can, and try and make the best bang for the buck to provide for your safety.
Nobody's questioning that. Nobody's questioning the quality and the expertise of the police department. All I'm asking in this is that, do we have too many officers for the amount of crime that there is?
So let me just address that, because we've had this discussion pretty extensively last year, and the answer is no. I think we have the right number of officers for the activity that's in the township today.
And
Sir, let me just give you a little more information, just so you can see on our website, we had 1,700 calls last month.
I understand, 700, but how many of them?
1,700.
Right, but I understand that. What I'm asking is, and if I can see the report, it'd be great. All I'm asking is, if I can see it, how many, because I know other people in town ask me the same thing, how many of them are true calls that should be done by a trained police officer, and how many of them could be done by an auxiliary police, a retired person? You know, all I'm saying is how many felonies, misdemeanor crimes, serious traffic accidents were, that's all.
Yeah, sorry, that data is available on the township website every month.
I looked for it, I couldn't find it, but that's okay.
Yeah, it's in the packet that comes around with this.
Okay,
for this
I'll
board.
look for it. Thank you very much for...
And seriously, just email me, I'll tell you where to find it. We're not trying to hide the ball.
Okay, that's fine. Thank you very much.
I appreciate your concern
I'm always open if you'd like to come in and actually come behind the doors, walk in, see what we do. I can let you talk to the different officers, take you out, see what we're dealing with. It's more, sometimes it's easier than doing a public meeting like this, explain all the ins and outs. We do have a great program. We do a Citizens Police Academy.
I took too much valuable time to begin with, so I apologize for that, but thank you.
No, we understand your point, though. We appreciate it. It's not, the point is try to save money. Okay. Any other public comments? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Motion to authorize staff to advertise and receive bids for the 2025 Super Pave project. Mr. Fitzgerald.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Staff is requesting approval to put the 2025 Super Pave program out to bid. We're currently trying to finalize our street list. We're probably going to hold off a couple more weeks until this weather breaks with the freeze and everything we're having before we finalize our roads. But we just want to have the opportunity to get all the documentation and stuff up in the pen bid. We plan to be back to the board in April for final approval.
Thank you,
Happy to
Mr.
answer any
Fitzgerald.
questions.
Do I hear a motion?
So moved.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Any board comments or questions? Public comments or questions? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Motion to approve the proposal for ScanTech for scanning township documents. Mr. Duraco.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Originally, in our 2025 budget, we had planned and budgeted for $20,000 for a staff member to come in and start scanning a lot of the documents in our rolling files in the back of the building here. Earlier this year, last month, sat down with our IT director and our public information specialist to talk about implementing that and getting ready and moving forward. And actually, our IT director made the suggestion that maybe we should reach back out to one of the vendors that had previously provided a proposal to do all the scanning and see if they could scale it down. They had initially come back with a proposal to do $20,000 worth of scanning. After bringing it to the Finance Committee and talking with them, again, to move this project along and expedite it, we're now requesting approval for $50,000 worth of work for this year. We expect that this will be a 5 to 6 year project, given the amount and the size of the files that we have back there. But once we're done that, we'll have everything digitalized and in our document management system, which we implemented last year. So I'm happy to answer any questions.
Actually, I have a question. Why is it still 5 or 6 years? I thought by increasing the amount we spent, we could accelerate it.
So, talking with Mike, just, it depends on how many files we can actually get in the box and then exactly the size of the file. So, without getting into, there's no exact science to it, so.
Right, thanks. Do I hear a motion?
So moved.
Do I hear a second? Second. Any board comments or questions?
Yeah, I got a question. So, Joe, help me understand this. I heard you say $20,000, then I heard you say $50,000. So is it $20,000 per year, or is it $50,000 per year?
So we'll adjust it next year's budget, but the original plan was $20,000 a year and a part-time staff member. And then, it could take forever. The concern from Mike was that if you don't hire the right person, they could drag this out even longer and you're just throwing away money, whereas ScanTech, and we had, a few other proposals, this is what they do. And so, we're going to get a lot more of an efficient product out of it. The Finance Committee was, recognized that, look, this is going to take years to do. We had a proposal to do everything, and it was $300,000. So again, spreading that out over the next couple of years, but, this is something that we need to do. So just speeding that up rather than taking, probably closer to 10 years to do.
And this company is the only company that we asked to do it? Like, we didn't put bids out to see who could, or?
No, Mike went out and got 3 proposals. This was by far the lowest.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Any other board comments or questions? Public comments or questions? This project, we definitely need to get this done. This is an important project for efficiency in the township, for sure, and to make Aaron's job doable, for sure. So anyway, with that said, all in favor say aye. We have a motion in a second? Did I do that already?
Yeah, you
did. All right. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Motion to authorize proposals from Simone Collins and Pannoni for the Friendship Park construction documents. Mr. DeRocco.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Tonight, we're asking for approval for both Simone Collins and Pannoni to do work with Friendship Park. Friendship Park Master Plan was something that we completed last year during the year. I applied for a grant, I think it was late last year, maybe early this year, I can't remember now, for $1 million for the actual construction, towards the actual construction of the park. Part of what, we explained in that grant was that, the township's skin in this is that, we're going to pay for the construction documents. So, if we're awarded the bid, if we're awarded the grant, we'll be ready to get that out to bid late this year, and then construction potentially next year. But this is all the upfront work that's going to be required to get us ready for that. It is budgeted. The Simone Collins proposal is $121,500, and the Pannoni proposal for the surveying, since we didn't have a surveyed map of the property, is $33,800. Total cost for this would be $155,300, and it's included in the budget.
Thanks, Mr. DeRocco. Do I hear a motion?
So moved.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Any board comments or questions? Public comments or
Wait a
questions?
minute, I do got something. So answer me a question, DeRocco. This is, when we had the meeting before, and we talked about the park, and we were saying, and the gentleman came with all the pretty fluff and what have you. We've gotten rid of the pretty fluff, and we're going back to the basics. So are we starting all over, or are we dealing with the pretty fluff? And
We're taking what we recommended is in that master plan, that pretty fluff, and
Right.
now actually putting the documents that would tell a contractor where to put the fence, where to build the pavilion, exactly where to go and how to do it.
that's going to get done this year, where we take out, put the fence, put the dog park and all, and then
Yeah.
go to the next step.
Actually, yep, exactly.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Expand the parking lot a little bit, all those pieces, if that makes, the parking lot gets a little bigger, a couple of those things. Yeah, that makes sense?
Yes.
Yeah, we need the grant funding first, though. Remember, this is the work we do before, in anticipation of getting the grant funding to build the park, yeah. Yeah, no. Yeah. Any other questions? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Motion to authorize, approve proposals from Simone Collins for Wilson Farm Park rebid. Mr. DeRocco.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Tonight I'm asking for approval of the proposal from Simone Collins for $6,100 to help us get the rebid of Wilson Farm Park. If you remember last month, we rejected the bids that we had gotten in as they were, they exceeded the budget and exceeded the funding that we had available. We're going to work with them to revise that plan and then hopefully get that back out the bid. So happy to answer any questions.
Thanks, Mr. DeRocco. Do you hear a motion?
So moved.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Any comments or questions from the board, from the public?
Good evening, everybody. Mike Heberg from Berwyn. Go Birds. I haven't heard that yet tonight. Got a bunch of Dallas fans in here or what? So my question is, I'm puzzled by the sequencing of this proposal. Apparently, and I wasn't unable to watch last month's meeting where the Wilson Farm Park proposal was discussed and the rebid was discussed, because I don't think the last month's meeting was on the website. Or it wasn't as of this weekend when I looked, so for what that's worth. But basically, the accompanying materials in the packet say the township has recently determined to pursue purchasing of a nearby racket club that would meet the community's needs for tennis and pickleball, which I'm not aware that that's been discussed either. So my understanding is, maybe you guys can illuminate me, that we're going to take a motion later in the meeting to authorize advertising of a public hearing. And this would suggest that we're going to go ahead and do a bunch of preliminary work that's predicated on the approval of the eminent domain proposal. And I don't really understand why we would do that, or I mean, I thought that when we advertise a hearing, this would suggest that the decision's already been made. before the hearing has even been held, because we're going to go out and spend money to modify our bid package, which is contingent upon us acquiring this additional property to be used for pickleball and tennis. And I just don't understand the sequencing. I don't know why we would do it that way. Maybe somebody can help me understand.
Mr. Drock, you want to speak to it? I can.
Yeah, so that was, there's some preliminary conversations about that, but as part of the bid package, pickleball courts were included in the master plan for Wilson. That was probably, we identified those costs to be probably around $300,000 to $400,000 when you add in all the stormwater. And so we had planned to take those out of the bid in Wilson because of that cost. So that's why we're removing those.
Actually, the bids we received the first time around for Wilson Park were above the budget we had for Wilson Farm Park. So we were looking for things to trim out, and that's how we got to here. That's why we rejected the bids last month. and
Okay,
have
I can understand if you take the pickleball courts out, but the substitution for the location that's been identified is totally separate. We don't own that property as far as I know, and I have further questions about that when we get to that section of the meeting. But the whole sequencing of this thing, to me, is off. I mean, it seems to me like we're going to spend money to rebid the project, and the next item on the agenda, item O, contemplates the same sequencing. It seems to me that the way to do it is, once you decide that you've got the bird in the hand, if you do, you're holding a hearing in order to make that decision, and there's going to be a vote that's going to be taken during that hearing, or after that hearing, I assume. I think, first of all, I think it's a bad look to say, well, we're going to hold a hearing, but by the way, we've already gone out and bid the project based on the expectation that we're going to buy this property. Well, that decision hasn't been made. Have you heard anything from the public yet about that? And so that's my concern. And it just seems to me that the proper way to do it would be to hold the hearing. If in fact the hearing, depending on which direction the hearing goes, if you end up acquiring the property, okay, well then we're going to rebid it. We're going to ask Simone Collins to do their work to revise the documents that we need to go out to bid. If we don't, we may be back to putting pickleball courts into Wilson Farm Park. But it doesn't make sense to me to go to the public and say, yeah, well, we're already going to bid this thing out based on the certainty that in fact we're going to acquire this property, and that's where we're going to put the pickleball courts and the tennis courts. So that would be my strong suggestion. I mean, I'm not sure that anybody's going to act on it, but that seems to me to be the right way to do it, is to not do one before you've actually made your decision.
Yeah, no, thanks. Thanks for the input. Any other public comment? Any board comments? Anything else? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Motion to authorize staff to advertise and receive bids for Wilson Farm Park. Mr. Duraco.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is just a step in the process to be able to get the project back out to bid once the construction documents have been revised and bid documents revised. We expect that to take a little bit of time, but we'll be ready to go when those things are done.
Thank you. Do I hear a motion?
So moved.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Any board comments or questions? Public comments or questions? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Yep. Hi, my name is Joanne Fisher, and I'm president of the Chesterbrook Civic Association. The Civic Association represents all the residents of Chesterbrook. As you're aware, Chesterbrook wins accolades and awards every year and has won the best place to live several years in a row. The reason Chesterbrook is so admired is its well thought out planned community. It combines multiple types of homes offset with open space and recreational space all connected with paved walking trails that makes it safe and easy for residents to walk to green and recreational space. To allow 355 Chase Road to become anything other than recreational space would be detrimental to the community. The residents of Chesterbrook wholly support this initiative and are committed to support the township in any way. Is it too early?
It's too early, yeah. We're not
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
I'll come back.
Come back, yeah, we're not
Sorry.
there yet. No, that's okay. That's item Q. We're still on O. Thank you, though. We appreciate the enthusiasm. So we're on the motion to authorize staff to advertise and receive bids for Wilson Farm Park. Any other comments on that topic? We hear, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Motion to approve emergency sanitary sewer repair on Copper Beach Lane. Mr. Fitzgerald.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. On January 3rd, we were notified of a water leak. We went out there, determined it was a sanitary sewer leak. We contacted one of our contractors. They came out. We dug down about 10 to 12 feet. We were unable to find the sanitary sewer main, so we had to call in another contractor. The problem we had in between the two was the snowstorm coming in, so we had to delay it a day, actually a day and a half before we could go ahead and start. So we ended up doing a pump and haul operation from our pump station. Got it fixed. It's fine now. We're actually in the process of looking at getting engineered to replace that force main, so we'll be coming back for that at a later date. The contractors we had were Tommy's Paving and Excavating for $18,394.22, which included all the repair parts we needed. Ron Smith Incorporated for $23,923.61. And KBX Golden, who did our pump and haul services, for $44,556.75. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Fitzgerald. Do I hear a motion?
So moved.
Do I hear a second? Second. Any comments from the board?
I do have a question, and I wasn't adding them up as you went through, but what's the aggregate cost? Like, you gave 3 costs for each.
The whole thing was $88,874.58.
Thank you.
Any other board comments or questions? Public comments or questions? Thanks for getting this done. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Motion to authorize advertisement of a public hearing on Monday, March 17, 2025, to consider and possibly adopt an ordinance to exercise the power of eminent domain to acquire a portion of real property located at 355 Chase Road, UPI number 35-5-32.3A, for a public park and access thereto for recreation for use by the general public. Mr. McKenna.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The board and the public is probably aware that this is the portion of property located in Chesterbrook that is more commonly known as the Picket Post, or was more commonly known as the Picket Post Swim and Tennis Club. It's about 4.8 acres of property that's located between Chase Road and Hayward Road. The proposal is just that. It's to exercise eminent domain to acquire the portion of that land. It's an unusually shaped parcel, to say the least. It's sort of shaped like an L, and it also goes across Hayward with a little finger of a strip of land that connects to the trails that were actually mentioned earlier. The charter itself requires that any time the board exercises the power of domain, it must initially do so through the exercise of an ordinance. The actual process for the taking is governed by the eminent domain code and could not occur unless and until the ordinance is enacted and becomes effective, and a declaration of taking would thereafter be initiated. So it will all depend upon what happens at the hearing next month.
Thank you, Mr. McKenna. Do I hear a motion?
So moved.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Do we hear any board comments or questions? Let me just add a little bit. What was until a few years ago a busy outdoor recreation area is now closed and falling into disrepair. It's in the densest part of what has, as Ms. Fisher just said, been ranked one of the #1 places to live in Pennsylvania. No viable plan for permitted use has been put forth. The site has been designated and used for outdoor recreation for over 50 years. The needs for outdoor recreation are only increasing in the township. Residents are asking for more options. This is the perfect addition to meet the needs of our residents. Any other board comments? Any public comments?
So I'd also just like to add to my previous comments, which were a little premature, that the community feels so strongly and supports the township in this initiative. We'd also like to let you know that as the community, we will be willing to fundraise if necessary to close any shortfalls in funding to acquire and rehabilitate this property as a park. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Any other public comments?
I have one virtual as well.
Okay, well, I think Mr. Hebert was stood up first, and then we'll do the virtual one.
Thank you, Mike Heberg from Berwyn. I like the last comment that the last speaker made, the willingness to fundraise to help pay for this. I think that would be excellent. Few questions. Do we know if the Tredyffrin Township has ever used the power of eminent domain?
I do not know, and certainly not during my tenure as solicitor. This would be the first time.
Not during my time following things here either.
I do know it was used for the sewer line. I know that way back when they were acquiring properties for the sewer. That's the only documents that I can recall seeing, but that would have been 60 some odd years ago. There could be anything.
The school district has been a pretty active user.
I understand the school district has, yes, I'm aware of that. So, and the word "a taking" is not exactly the best word in the English language. So, I mean, eminent domain.
It's the statute's language.
Right, and it's accurate.
Correct.
Okay, the property owner owns the property, and the government is saying, we're going to take the property from you at your cost, and we're going to compensate you at some level. So the eminent domain process is one that that has significant restrictions in most of the states in the United States. So it's not it's something that's been tested in the courts over the decades and the centuries, in fact. And so it is something that's a lengthy and expensive and risky proposition. You know, you go into it not knowing what you're going to pay for the property, right? So it is at significant risk to you, but also to the township residents, because we don't know what we're going to end up paying for this asset, right? So I guess my first question is, like, what is the plan to do with the property? We're going to acquire this property, or we're proposing to think about acquiring it. We're going to advertise to potentially pass an ordinance which is going to go down the road towards acquiring the property. What's the plan to do with the property? With the land itself that we acquire, we're going to spend whatever. Do we know how much, or do we have an estimate?
Yeah, all that's going to be discussed in a month when we actually have the hearing. I mean, today we're just voting to advertise for the hearing, but as you heard, we think it's a valuable piece of property for outdoor recreation. It was a very highly used tennis facility, tennis and racket sport facility, and that's a need in the township.
And we have a 90-acre park, public park, that's literally 200 yards.
They're actually almost connected. Yeah, there's a path that goes between.
Right, so they're basically attached to one another. I mean, it's a head scratcher. I guess this expenditure is not in the budget, right? I mean, I can't find it in the 2025 budget. So where would the money come from to pay for it?
Well, some of it might be fundraised by residents, as you just heard. Some would come from reserves.
Okay, which is resident taxpayer money. Right. So by my count, at this point, we're planning to spend $5.5 million in general fund reserve this year. I guess I go back a ways. I can remember the quaint days when spending $1 million out of reserves was shocking. We're going to spend $5.5 million, and then we may spend another $1 million or $2 million or $3 million or $4, I don't know, on acquiring a 4.8 acre parcel in the township. I'm just trying to understand the plan and also the funding source. So we're just going to, Joe, do we have an unlimited amount of money in the reserves, or do you have any concerns about moving forward with this?
One of the other areas that we'll look into is trying to acquire some grant funding for acquisition. Hopefully, we'll be able to land some of that. We have some feelers out there. We did discuss with the Finance Committee, the impact that this would have on the reserves, given a range, right? And so we're trying to narrow that down to see, before the board takes official action, trying to nail down what we think that range is, so that way we can really give a better picture of it.
And Joe, just for benefits, this year, what we finished with a $2 million surplus, right?
Yeah, that was what we were looking at, projecting in December. We're still working on year-end close right now.
That was last year. Yeah, not this year. This year's budget, this year the budget is to use $5.5 million in reserves. Right? Yeah, no, it's about half and half. So, I have my concerns. So do we think we're going to run a surplus this year? Right, which gets back to
Remember, last year,
it gets back to our discussion
we had
during
Mr.
the
Hebert,
budget.
last year we had the same discussion about the fact that we were spending reserves. We actually finished the year with a surplus.
Right.
It's, as you know, it's inherently difficult to budget for the way the township operates because of the variability in our revenue.
Yes, I understand that, but we also had a discussion in November at the budget hearing where I suggested that maybe there was a way to reduce the variability by building in some assumptions, which would have then meant that you wouldn't have even had to increase taxes this year. And, so if we're planning to run a surplus every year, then why are we raising taxes 6.5%? I guess, which gets to that point. So, but I'll have more questions next month. I think it's I wonder whether. How many homes or residences are there in the Chesterbrook community? Yes. Does that include all the houses, all the townhomes, everything? Is 700?
2,700. There's almost 6,000 residents.
Yeah, it's several thousand, 2,500.
2,500? Okay. So, I think that would be because the other thing that concerns me is that we've got 13 parks all over the township, right? Do we need a 14th park? Do we have a couple $1 million burning a hole in our pocket for another park? And Chesterbrook is already, I think, one could argue, especially with an additional $2.5 million roughly of investment in Wilson Park, as a result of the renovation that's going on. Chesterbrook is already very well served, I think, relative to virtually any other area of the township with public parks and open space. There's also the balance that goes along with the fact that there may be parks that could use some love and some financial investment that we'll have to sacrifice if we go spend $2 million to acquire this property, notwithstanding the fact that the property is not ready to be used as a park right now, right? You acquire the land through eminent domain, but there's going to have to be a significant investment made in order to make it a functional park, a place with pickleball courts and
It has 6 pickleball courts and 4 tennis courts already, so there are some infrastructure there. But I hear you. There's other residents who want to speak, but yeah, I hear you.
Okay.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you.
Okay.
Hello. Okay,
All
sorry.
right, we'll get, Ms. Clark, we're going to see if we can try this again, and fingers crossed. You're on if it works.
Okay, can you hear me now?
It's working.
Oh, fabulous. Thanks so much. Hello to everybody. It's Carol Clark from Tredyffrin. Thank you for Mr. Hebert speaking up. He took a lot of the questions that I had. I think we have to have a very healthy discussion. It seems a little late to be doing that right before the ordinance discussion, but people want to ask the same questions perhaps then. So do make sure you have time at the beginning of that ordinance discussion to explain the various thoughts that people, the most recent thoughts of how you're going to be using this land, why the analyses that you did showed that this way was the way to go with an eminent domain concept. I'm wondering if you could perhaps delve down into what would be you touched on it a little bit, but were the expected costs of redeveloping this parcel into a public park, just so that it was a basic park? From my recollection, there's different buildings on there, or remnants of a pool that have been filled in, and some other things. So before you could even put in just a grassy area, a lot of work, I believe, would need to be done. And have there been any estimates on how much that would cost before we get to adding in any appropriate infrastructure for whatever the specific outcome is in terms of our plan and use?
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah, Ms. Clark, so all we're talking about tonight is just advertising for the public hearing, which will be next month. And then we'll have a full plan to talk about, and that would be really the better time to answer all your questions, if that's okay.
Thank you. I just want to make sure everyone's prepared to address those questions before discussing the ordinance itself. Thank you.
Thanks.
Hi, Claire Lewis. I just want to say thank you for the support that you've given our community up to this point. We're really looking forward to the opportunity to having a public hearing where we can put our side of the story and explain to you why we think this is an important thing to move forward with. Thank you.
Hi, Betsy Hargis. I live at Head House Court. I live directly across from where this whole episode is taking place. And in terms of being prepared, Ms. Clark and Mr. Hebert, I would suggest that you guys drive over and look at the park. And look at where it is. There's not a bunch of buildings. The barn was taken down. I think that what your impressions of what you think is going on there is not correct. And believe me, the people who live in proximity and who are impacted by this do understand that. So let's all be prepared. Thank you.
Any other public comments? Board comments anymore?
I do, I got a question. Mr. Hubert? Hebert? Heberger? I'm sorry, I didn't mean to pronounce your name wrong. Can I ask you a question? What is it that you want to see with that land, that you're having this, what is it that, I've listened to what you said, and I know we have to do it next month, but what is it that you have I can't think of the word I want to say, but what is it, the only way I can say it is, what is it you see that if this land is done the way you want it, the way they're saying through intimate domain, that you seem not to feel comfortable with? That's the only way I can put it. What is it?
I appreciate your question. I just think, I served as a supervisor. You may not know that. So that being said, I think the order of the process is important. I think that it should be done in a way where it's clear that that it's not predetermined what the decision is going to be. Okay, and that was my objection to the order in which this is done. There's a right way to do it, in my opinion, from a sequencing standpoint, and that was why I offered that as a concern. I also am mindful of the fact that any expenditure of township funds comes out of the pocket of every single property owner here. The person that lives in the Panhandle, the person that lives out by Cedar Hollow, the person that lives in South Devon, the people who live on Valley Forge Mountain. So I think it's important to look, the utility of amenities that we provide and to make sure that it's spread fairly across the entire community. And that if we're going to spend $2 million on a park, or $3 million, or $4 million, whatever the amount is, that it is widely used among members of the community across the board. and that the person who lives in the Panhandle is going to, it doesn't say, well, what do you mean they're going to spend a lot of my taxpayer money on a place that's, and I did visit the site. I've been in there multiple times, but I went in there on Saturday, and it's not a place that someone's going to stumble on. If you said to a lot of people in the township, why don't you go over to where Chase Road is, where the Picket Post Swim Club is, they'd say, I don't even know what you're talking about. And so I just am raising concerns because I want to make sure that the interests of all the township residents are well served by whatever decision is made.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Good evening, Mark Lewis from Chateau Circle. Again, thank you very much for the way that the board has been working over the past 6 or 7 years to address the blight that is currently happening over there at Picket Post Swim Club. There are about 500 houses in the general area. I think one thing that should be remembered actually is that the recreational facilities, the tennis and the pickleball facilities, were used by literally dozens, if not hundreds of people each week, and people travelled in to use that facility. They've been unable to access that whilst the site has been really left to deteriorate. I think that the idea of having a public forum in a month's time would be very, very good, and I think it actually gives different groups an opportunity to prepare themselves. But I also appreciate the way that you've tried to work through quite a big issue with Wilson Park in terms of finance as well. So it makes sense, and I really hope that we get the chance to discuss it in detail. I appreciate everyone's viewpoint. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comments? Are we done? Any board finished? Any other comments we have? All right, we have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Motion to approve the PennDOT right-of-way sanitary sewer facilities operations maintenance and endowment agreement for 1010 Wayne LLC, the 602 Eagle School Road. Mr. McKenna.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is our standard form of agreement where there are facilities, whether they're stormwater or sanitary sewer, that will be implicated and run through a portion of a PennDOT right-of-way. PennDOT requires the township to always be the ultimate responsible party and permittee on the HOP when these improvements are installed in their right-of-way. The township, however, pushes that responsibility down on the property owner, as it ultimately only benefits that one property owner. So what is before you tonight is the agreement that we reviewed, prepared in conjunction with this property, which I think was just a building permit, not part of a land development, just a building permit, if I recall correctly. It was not quite ready. It was almost ready for last month, but it just wasn't done in time. So we're asking for the board's approval of consideration of approval for this agreement.
Thank you, Mr. McKenna. Do I hear a motion?
So moved.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Any board comments or questions? Public comments or questions? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Now we go to new matters. Any board member new matters?
It's not a new, but Darren, I just wanted, from my standpoint, I'm on the Panhandle side, down at that stupid corner, King of Prussia Road and Upper Gulf Road. But during the last couple of weeks when we've had snow, ice, and all kinds of crazy weather, I just want to say thank you to you and your staff, because I'd wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning and I heard a truck going past. And I'd wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning and I heard a truck going past. And when I got up in the morning at 8 o'clock, the street was clean and you all did your job. So I don't know about anybody else here, but I want to say thank you to you and your guys for keeping the roads clean and done.
Okay, thank you very much. We have a very dedicated staff here that does a very good job for us, so they deserve the credit, so thank you.
No, thank you, Carlotta, for pointing that out. I would just add that it is noticeable when you drive between the townships that our township does a really good job. I mean, it's obvious, so thank you. Any other board member new matters? Citizen new matters? I see people here, so I'm sure, yeah, come on up. Yeah, I'm sure there's things you want to talk about.
Good evening, and thank you for your service. I'm Sean Jackson from the Mount Pleasant community, and I was here maybe 2 months ago in reference to the zoning code section 208-122-01 or -1, and it is related to the student housing within the township. In the township, we have a total of 13 houses, and in our community, and there's a bunch of us that are back here, we have 8, which is 62%. So of the total housing within the community, which is a burden for many of the citizens there. Now, I did reach out to the zoning director and let her know that there was yet again another house that was put on the market as a student house that is not approved. And I'd like to know what we need to do about that. I've sent information regarding that property. I've sent pictures. As a citizen of the community, I don't think that I am the investigator and need to be the one that does that, but that's what I have done because we feel like, and I'm speaking for the representatives back here as well, that if we allow 927 Mount Pleasant Avenue to continue as a college house, that just opens the door for many more to come. And as I said initially, our burden is 62% of the total population within the community or within the township, which is a high burden for us. In addition to that, many of the college houses are not on the approved list. And my understanding is that annually they are to get an approval and let us know what students are in the properties and whether or not there's more than 3, because there's a total of 3 that are allowed per property, and there's several properties in the community that are not approved, and 2 of those properties that are not approved are an eyesore and a nuisance, for lack of a better word. They constantly have trash all over the place, which is a rodent hazard for the community, and we just need some relief. And I don't know who to turn to outside of the zoning board. I've done that and gotten nowhere.
Thank you.
And there's a few other things. Should I
Okay,
address
yeah,
them
well,
now?
actually, I think, let's hear about this one first. So, Mr. Martin, you want to talk about this?
Sure. Erin can give you more
Erin?
detail. So she handles the student housing. But yeah, so if there's complaints, we're aware of them. Reference to the rental housing, I'll let Erin give some more detail. But in order for us to enforce that, we need evidence. So I appreciate, and I know it's difficult for the residents. So by saying we believe it is, by law, I can only enforce, I have the evidence to enforce it, I could take it to a judge. We can ask them if there's student housing. If they don't respond without evidence to show there's students living in there, the district justice won't accept it. So Erin, if you want to give a little more detail of where you are on that.
Right, yeah, that's correct. I mean, I would have to take them to court, and I do need evidence, and I think I mentioned that to you, is any information that you can help provide that. We're going to send out a letter to see if they'll respond by saying they're student housing, and then I can use their word against them. But it is a little bit, hard to determine that it is a student housing without that evidence. And again, I have to go to court, so I have to be willing or have the information provided that the judge would uphold it.
So the pictures that I've sent you is not evidence enough. And besides that,
Right.
I am not an investigator.
Yeah, no,
And our tax dollars are used to pay for zoning, correct?
Correct. And I think the information that you provided was, it was for sale. I understand that it is being used as a rental. You can have a rental that isn't students, that would be allowed, and there's no permit required for that. So that's where I need to find out that they are students, and I have to have the information that they are students. Just because it's rented doesn't necessarily make it wrong.
So how do you find out that
That
they're
is the
students?
difficult part. That's what I'm saying.
So is the expectation that the community member provides that information?
Well, in other cases, that has happened. So I've had other student housing, if I got a police report and the students I've used that before where they, a police action has occurred and they labeled themselves as students. I've used that. I've had short-term housing or short-term rental where a resident was able to provide me with information and license plates and information that helped me be able to say, there was a turnover. That's a different type of use. But the residents did help me with that to get the information that I needed. So I understand that it is difficult. It's difficult for me. It's difficult for the community. I understand that. They're your neighbors. But I do need evidence in order to proceed with that.
And how do you propose getting that evidence?
Well,
Because
right.
as a community member, I'm not the investigator.
I understand that, yeah, and that's what I'm saying. Any information you can provide, if you have, I know you mentioned that you had spoken with one of the people. If I could have information on that person, maybe I could speak with them. Like I said, I'm gonna try to reach out to the homeowner and the property owner and see if they will, give me the information that I need that eventually I could use. I don't know that they would, I think that they have been homeowners, or that property has, I understand, passed down in the family, but they may be aware that they can have students, so I don't know that they're gonna provide me with that, but that's really, the only thing that I can think of that would, that I can get from them if they do provide it. It's certainly not easy.
So then how is
Yeah,
this
can I-
zoning code
Sean,
upheld? One second, I
I
have
was,
one
now I
question.
wanted to ask,
Okay,
hold on
go
for a
ahead.
minute. Let me ask the question, and I got to, Pat, okay. Mount Pleasant, with me being at large, Mount Pleasant is in my territory. So I'm going to ask you a legal question and tell me if this can be done, because I got to make sure it's right. So let's just say I happen to go past, because I know where the house is and I'm talking to someone, or someone in the area gets me the name or one of the students say, oh, I go to Villanova, okay? Is it okay for me to call Nova to confirm, is John Doe one of your students? And if Nova says to me, yes, can we use that? Or if they go to Haverford or wherever, and if I can get that,
If you have information from the university that confirms that they're a student, sure. I don't see why you couldn't use that information.
So I've tried that as well. I've tried to go to Villanova in another case where I thought I had a suspicion that it was a baseball house. I went to Villanova, and Villanova told me that they had no records of students that lived off campus, and they weren't able to provide me with that information. So I have tried that aspect as well.
The only reason why I was going to do is I'm going to use quote unquote, I'm going to come try to come, if they happen to go to Nova, I'll come through the back door as an alumni and,
I mean, if you can get it, that's fine, but
But I wanted to ask Pat, is it okay, is that, is it okay legally for me to do so? I don't want them to say.
Well, Carlotta, I hate giving legal advice from the dais, to be completely honest with you. So why don't we talk about that offline?
Okay.
I would prefer that. I also don't really want to the extent that we're going to investigate, with all due respect, I don't know if they're watching, and I would really rather not give them the path of the action we intend to take. So I think perhaps we can have that conversation offline and see if there are other things that we can come up with. I don't disagree. Obviously, we have the burden, if we were going to cite someone, that we have to establish with that court that, at a minimum, that they're in violation of the ordinance. Go ahead, please.
I was going to suggest sort of where you're headed, which is I think we need to have a meeting with, I hate to ask you to come back, but I think we should have a meeting not public or not, on TV, to talk about what we're going to do to help the community. Because you've been here before. I feel for your problem. We as a township need to come up with a specific action that doesn't involve you with a camera taking pictures of your neighbor.
Well, that's been done.
No, I get it. No, I get it. But I'm saying, like, making you the investigator. I hear your issue there. On the other hand, we have things we need also. So I think if we could arrange, do you have contact details?
Yes.
Just hang after this meeting, if you don't mind, for a few minutes.
Not at all.
And let's just see if we can organize a time to get together and talk about what we can actually do constructively that moves the ball forward and identifies whether these guys are really, I believe you, by the way. It identifies the problem and can actually make some progress versus next month you're here again complaining, like it's just not helpful for either of us, right?
Chairman Miller, I think
appreciate
that's a
that.
great idea. But I have a question for you, Aaron. It's been a long, long time since I looked at the ordinance because it was passed years ago. What about all the registration requirements? What about all the compliance requirements, 1,000 feet and this, that, and the other? I mean, do we just, I'm just saying.
Right, so,
I hope we just don't ignore them, you know, I know we don't ignore them.
so there were grandfathered homes at that time of the adoption.
Okay.
So those homes are the ones that have continually registered. So any new home, I don't want to talk about if I could get this home to admit that they're student housing rental, technically, or not technically, they would be required to get a special exception from the zoning hearing board. In that special exception, those requirements would have to be met in order to get the special exception. They would not meet that. So they would be denied, most likely, by the zoning hearing board.
Right, so the grandfather, real quick, so the grandfathering, I do remember that. But does that like exempt them from any requirements?
No, they do get their registrations every year.
Yeah, but they're allowed to be within 1,000 feet, there's more density.
Yeah, right, they're allowed to be student
Right.
housing. They don't have to meet the requirements of the special exception.
Okay.
But they do register.
Okay, so we have actually registrations?
Yes.
Okay. I mean, I guess that's okay. But
Yeah,
and that gives certain information that we can actually use. So if you're having, I'm just thinking out loud here, I don't know, I'm just, spitballing a little bit. Like, you see the fire in the trash can after the weekend party, on a Saturday night. And it's at this address. First of all, call the police. They shouldn't be doing that. But, so there's something here that maybe we can get together. But look, Chairman Miller's made a great suggestion. That's good. I was just wondering about the registration and what we were doing there and how that might dovetail in a certain way into things that are happening at some of these homes, But, my fear was, we have these registration requirements and somebody comes in and just says, the hell with that, I'm not registering anything. And I'm just going to rent to students. We can't let that, there should be, I don't know.
Right.
I don't know what the answer is, but
Right.
that's not good enough.
Yeah. That is right. That is correct. They should not be they should not be renting without the registration.
Right.
I have to determine that they're student housing so we can go down that path.
I feel for your problem, but anyway, let's get together and talk about an actual path with actions that we can take that hopefully get the situation resolved versus the way we're doing it now, because I agree with you. I hear your concern. If I lived there, I would have the same concerns you're having. And we as a community, as a township, need to come up with some solution that helps you. So, and that, yeah, does that make sense? So if you could just hang right after this meeting, let's figure out a time that we can all get together.
Sure.
Does that work for you?
And then there's some other things that we need to also discuss, such as abandoned cars on the road. Who do we go to about that? The police chief, okay. And then there's some concerns about big dump trucks being parked on the street in front of people's homes and things of that nature. Who do we go to about, is that you as well?
Yes, ma'am, we're working on that. Supervisor Carlotta Johnson, she brought up to us some of those concerns. We're looking at a ordinance revision. We have a draft ordinance that Mr. McKenna has worked with us on, and we're going to be presenting that, moving that forward. There's a hole in our traffic laws that need to be addressed, and that's one thing we're working on to get that forward. So that's going to move on for the oversized vehicle parking. That's something we're on top of. Abandoned cars, by all means, the traffic unit, you can email. There's the little link on the website, the traffic unit. You can call if you want to, a non-emergency number, say, can somebody check out abandoned vehicle? What the officers do, the traffic unit will come out, they'll check it, make sure everything's appropriate, the registration, whatever, make sure it's parked appropriately. And if it is abandoned, they'll start checking off how long has it been there, and they'll have to, there's a process for how long it can be, and I don't have all the details of that. That's what they do. But we'll get on top of that.
Thank you. And one last thing, and then I'm done, I promise. At the top of the street, it says no outlet, but there is a cul-de-sac at the bottom of the street. People turn around in people's driveways and things of that nature. Is it possible now, if the cul-de-sac is in Upper Marion Township, it's not in Tredyffrin, but the sign is in Tredyffrin Township, is it possible to get a sign up there that says there's a turnaround at the bottom of the street so our driveways aren't constantly being turned around in with these big trucks?
I'd have to look into that. I don't know. I'll have to look into that. I never heard that. I've never had that question before, but we'll look into it and I'll get somebody with a smarter mind to help us out.
I thank you for that, and that's my last concern for tonight.
Excuse me, I had a question for you. Before this property became leased out, I assume it was owner occupied before this. Where did they park? Right in front of the house, or did they have some kind of contract with the church? Like, what were they doing?
That property owner did park in front of the house, but the abandoned cars and the trucks and things of that nature are associated with another property. It's not with the property that has been assumed by students at this time.
So the present residents, do you know how many cars are?
There's 3 cars and 3 students, and I do know one of the students who I introduced myself to, and he told me he went to Villanova, so that's how I know the young man. But outside of that, I don't know. And I do also know that the owner of the property, it was inherited, was told by myself and another community member that he was not supposed to use the house for student housing. And the first semester he didn't. He tried to rent it and it wasn't rented. So then the second semester, because it wasn't rented, then he decided to go ahead and do what he wanted to do and put students in there.
I have a question for Chief Beatty. Can the police department use the license plate recognition software to look up, who's the owners of the cars? Is that something that would be of help, or?
We'll just use a regular investigative. The traffic will go down, check things out, look into it. They'll check the stickers on it, the registration, to see who has it, and they'll do whatever investigative. If it's abandoned, if it meets the requirements, they'll take appropriate action. If it's parked, if it's not parked the appropriate way, if it's parked too close to a driveway, if it's blocking a driveway, whatever they can do, they'll utilize whatever enforcement tools they can.
Thank you. I can tell you the license plates for the students, one's from Connecticut, one's from Maryland, and the other one I think is from New York. And if you'd like, I can take pictures of them too.
That's very helpful.
Sounds good.
Sorry, I haven't done this in quite a while. Janet Burton, resident of Tredyffrin Township. I'm just making the recommendation that the ordinance for the college student be reviewed, revised, whatever, to put some teeth into it. We thought 20 years ago when we worked on this that it would alleviate any further houses being designated as college houses. So apparently that's not happening. Registration's not being enforced, et cetera. So I think we need to address the ordinance itself to try to put some controls in it that help us as residents be able to, I'm not saying we police it, but be able for the town to police it better for us. So when we meet to discuss about that situation, I hope that we look into really just revising the ordinance itself. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Vanita Banks Lane, and I'm a longtime resident of the Mount Pleasant community. I'm here with support of my fellow neighbors in the area. I've been here with many of them several times, and I'm here again, okay? I don't know what's going on in the community, and we know the whole landscape of the world is changing. We've had a lot of new neighbors come into the neighborhood. We try to be as friendly as we can, but continually we keep having the same problems over and over and over again. college students. You heard Sean talk about that. You also heard her talk about the construction vehicles, which are in the neighborhood now. New neighbors have come in, new houses are being built, and people don't know what the ordinance are, or even how to just govern themselves as they move in as residents. My concern is, along with the college housing, is the construction vehicles. Now, I'm not talking about your typical Ford or Chevy pickup. I'm talking about construction vehicles that are parking on the street, that are blocking the residents from going up and down the street, that are blocking the mailboxes, which I believe if it works the same way where you live, where we live, your mail's not being delivered. Commercial properties, it's not Mount Pleasant. It's residents. So why are commercial properties coming in and parking their construction vehicles in the neighborhood? As I stated before, a lot of movement, a lot of construction has been going on Mount Pleasant Avenue. People have not been able to park where they normally park on the street because of all this. Now, I would imagine as construction is being done, the township is coming down and looking at all this, making sure that things are being done right. Nothing's been done. I personally have called the police. I'm still waiting for them to get back to me. I've called Erin McPherson. I'm still waiting for her to get back to me. What do we have to do? That's all I have to say.
Thank you.
I apologize if somebody get back to you, but please call me. We will get back to you. And like I mentioned earlier, the traffic ordinance is being updated so we can address that vehicle. We understand what's going on with it. We've been looking at it. We had to do an ordinance change, which takes a little bit of time to get going, but we are going to do it, and we're going to make sure we address that. But we have to look, when the ordinance, you can't do a spot. We have to be collective for the whole township, and we're working on that collectively to work with the solicitor to get an appropriate ordinance so we can't have those large commercial vehicles on a residential street.
Sorry. I heard you say that, and I hope that you're going to follow through with that. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Barbara Bird, and I'm a long-term resident there in Mount Pleasant. I want to address two areas. One, to the chief of police. I think sometimes when we call, we don't get the response that we expect, and it has to do with the college students because they party a lot. And of course, I'm sure my kids did the same thing. However, they came up to another level this past year. They put up blue tarps that probably stretched from here all the way across. You were a witness to them. And we were told that they weren't doing anything wrong. However, we found out that they were bringing in underage kids and they were charging and different things. It took like 2 hours for the police to come out, and finally we called on Carlotta and she got some people down there. I don't know what's going on behind the blue tarps. What I do know from where I lived, they were urinating facing me, and I'm talking about girls, boys, underage, everything. And I took pictures, and it wasn't really pretty, but of course I didn't, give those pictures out. But that's a concern, that's nudity. Not only that, they have thrown beer bottles over the fence and stuff. They leave the trash, as you've already heard. So I guess we need a little bit more attention when we do call. We had 6 or 7 people we got on the phone. We called a couple times, and nothing happened. Not only that, there were children coming down, young people coming down in Uber cars. There's no way they had seatbelts on because it looked like a clown car. They had like 10 people getting out of the car, coming to the party. Where's the party? They're parked all the way up the top of the street, coming down. So that's my first issue, and it's not anything personal against you, but it's something that, hey, our community deserves a little bit more attention when we have those many college, houses in the neighborhood. The second thing kind of ties into that signage that we were talking about at the top of the hill, and I did call the police one time, and that's when they had they were doing a survey up there. They had the speed limit thing up there, and they were saying, well, it looks like you had 1,000 cars. Well, that wasn't true. It was picking up the cars from Upper Gulf. But besides that, when we were talking about the construction vehicles, I had one in front of my house one day. They're putting in the new housing up there, and it's just about done. But I have never seen a vehicle that long in my life. It was like 2 new car carriers. It was huge, and they were rolling this stuff off and everything. So I went up and I asked the owner, I said, are they gonna be done? Because my mailman doesn't get out. He's not gonna get out of the car. I might not get it, And he said, yeah, they're gonna move. He was very nice about it, but it didn't move. So we're talking about construction vehicles that shouldn't be parked there, or at least parked in front of where the construction's going on, but then that would interfere with other people getting the mail. So I think that's something to be thought about in terms of the signage. And again, it is a problem. It does say no outlet. That is very true. But I have had huge trucks back in my driveway. My pavement doesn't support that. Other people, the same thing. Wherever there's wide enough for, they'll back in. And our houses are close to the street. They could take out half of the house if they weren't paying attention. So those are just things that I just wish that we would get more attention when those type things happen, especially since we have so much activity, like was just said, the neighborhood's changing, it's gentrification at its best, and we just need to do what we can do to stop it, if at all possible, or to help us out. Thank you.
Okay, another story. How you doing? My name is Tom Tron. Next September, I'll be in that Mount Pleasant area for 50 years. So I've tried to foster a relationship with an owner of 2 properties. He mentioned to me to be careful mentioning his name. He is an investor. He borrowed money, bought 2 homes. Now he has made an LLC, Mount Pleasant Holdings. He says it's not his place, but yet it's addressed to his residence in Chester Springs. So this is, I sent him a text on December 12th. I said, Roger, 995 and 985, party still a mess. This is 1 o'clock in the morning. 3 cop cars, drunk kids yelling, Ubers, street blocked. Give these kids hell. 4 neighbors, including myself, were impacted with this. And the next message in the morning, I said, I was out on the street this AM picking up their cans and trash. The drunk fools left the front door open. He responded saying, oh my God, I did forward your text to the tenants, including a couple of the moms. One has already responded saying she will check into it and apologize. And I could keep going on this, but my point is that it's an LLC. So I'm glad I have a relationship with Roger. When there's a problem like this, I can text him and say, Roger, this is a problem. There's trash everywhere. He can then text the kids. If it's an LLC, who do you contact? There isn't a front person. I think the township, at least in my street, needs that. We need to be able to have somebody to call up in a friendly term and say, hey, there's a problem. And it makes it easier for us and easier for the police. And I think it's more efficient and beneficial.
Thank you. Aaron, as part of the registration, don't they have to, yeah, go ahead.
Right, each of the registrations do have contacts, so you could, and I think some of the residents have requested the copies of it through a right to know. You could get copies of their registrations, which has all the contact information on it.
See if I got this.
No, leave it on. Red.
On?
Red.
Or on now?
Yep.
Okay, Christine Johnson again. I just want to say that this student housing ordinance thing, it's not limited just to Mount Pleasant. And we all know that Villanova bought Cabrini's campus, and they're due to start classes there in 2026. The house across the street from me right now, there's six Villanova students in there. They pay about $1,000 each So the guy's getting like $6,000 for the house, it's a dump. Now, what's to stop people, other people, if they're gonna get, they can rent their house in Tredyffrin for $6,000 and they don't give a crap, like, what happens to it? This isn't gonna just stop at Mount Pleasant. And you really have to figure out a way to enforce the student housing ordinance. It's not just us. With Villanova moving in, it's gonna be like a hot place. You know?
No, we're
It's not
concerned.
gonna
I
be
mean, that's
pretty.
why we're having a meeting to talk about what we can do here. 'Cause
You
we
know,
need
right
to-
now, like, you're saying that it's not enforceable. There's nothing we can do about this additional house. So if I wanted to go home tomorrow and rent my house out to 4 college students, there's nothing you can do to stop me. If Tom, you want to rent your house out? Nobody can stop you. There's nothing anybody can do about it. So, you know, investors, realtors, you know, Tredyffrin's the place to do this in, unless you can stop it. All right? That's all.
Yeah. Any other citizen new business? Our next meeting is March 17th, 2025. Was your motion to adjourn?
Second.
All in favor, aye. Meeting is over. Thanks.